Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Truth About Real Estate Investing show. My name is Erwin Cito, and this episode is brought to you by Cherry and I's Wealth Hacker Conference, the all-day, in-person, no Zoom option conference this November 12th, 2022. So that's this year. It's been 3 years in the making since we hosted over 1,500 investors and entrepreneurs to the conference of the year, headlined by Grant Cardone back in 2019. This year, our keynote speaker is Jesse Itzler, and he will be sharing his secrets on how to build a life resume to be proud of. Think of it as when your time on this planet is up, you look back and are you proud of the accomplishments and relationships with those that are most important to you? We learned about Jesse when Chair and I actually attended the 10X Growth Conference in Miami. We were actually there to scout out Grant Cardone before we hired him for our own conference. And Jesse was one of the speakers that day. He gave a fantastic talk about some of the wild stuff he's done. He's a Jewish guy from New York he's written an Emmy award-winning rap song. He's been a successful trend spotter. And that's how he's made all his hundreds of millions of dollars in founding businesses. For example, one of them was he co-founded basically the Uber of private jet sharing, and he later sold that company to Warren Buffett's NetJets. He also spotted a trend in energy drinks being more naturalized, so he partnered with Zico coconut water. If you're a Costco shopper like I, you've probably bought it before. And this company, Zico Water, he later sold it to Coca-Cola. He's courted and married Sarah Blakely. Jesse and I have something in common, that we have very famous spouses. Sarah Blakely being the founder and billionairess of Spanx. Together they have 4 kids, and they are a family to be admired in terms of the experiences that they share. And as Jesse is highly present in his kids' lives, he has a lot of freedom in his life thanks to his business ventures and investments. And he's a great parent. Jesse also happens to be a New York Times bestselling author of one of my favorite books, Living with a Seal. That seal happened to be the incredible David Goggins, and the story of David living with and training Jesse for 31 days. Jesse being a middle-aged man, father of young kids, he's a vegan and a marathon runner. The story is absolutely insane. I won't want to give away too much, but I personally found the book hilarious, inspiring, and educational. Again, one of my favorite books ever. I can't recommend it enough. In my opinion, in my experience, the audiobook is even better because Jesse reads the book himself. And even better will be to see Jesse speak live and in person on November 12th, 2022. On to this week's show. We have a veteran investor with us who's been investing for over a decade and has accumulated 25 properties, including several joint venture, JV for short, joint venture, with friends and family. Justin is one of our longtime clients, and as time in real estate, time in the market's more important than timing the market. Well, Justin's done quite well. Again, he's been an investor for over 10 years, and that time has served him well. He's invested largely in cash flowing properties in places like Alberta, Edmonton, Alberta, Waterloo, Ontario, and Hamilton, Ontario. My business, my team and I, we helped him out in Hamilton, of course, and those Hamilton properties alone have allowed Justin to join our exclusive 7-figure club. Now, what's a 7-figure club? Well, there's stages to being an investor. Owning $1 million of real estate isn't too hard these days. Earning $1 million in return, $1 million or more, is pretty significant, and Justin has done that along with many more of our clients. On today's episode, Justin shares how he got started. We dig into the numbers of some of his properties, including his first property, student rental in Waterloo, what motivated him to invest, what got that fire going, and what got him to start a podcast for parents to teach kids about money. Justin will also be part of a panel on joint venture a panel of joint venture experts on Saturday, 18th. It's a morning event. Starts at 9, ends at 12 p.m. at our next iWin Real Estate Meetup, live and in person only. There will be no online option. There'll be no recording either. Justin will be joined by longtime friend of iWin, Jules McKenzie, who has done over 50 joint venture properties, and he has 3 years as a police officer. Also, Jillian Irving, an expert in joint ventures, student rentals, and mortgage professional from Lynn City Mortgages, will round out our panel. So there's a link to register in the show notes. And for those of you on our email list, you'll get that as well. You're likely already getting emails to register for the event. Again, link is available in the show notes if you want to attend. For non-clients, it's only like $20, and that all the profits go to charity. So hope to see you there June 18th, and more importantly, November 12th for the Wealth Hacker Conference. wealthhacker.ca for details. Please enjoy the show. Hey, Justin.
Erwin, how you doing?
I'm excellent. What's keeping you busy these days?
Well, I would say my podcast is keeping busy. So I launched that back on April the 12th.
Uh-huh.
And it's a podcast. It's called Money Dad Podcast. And it's dedicated to helping parents raise money smart kids. So I've released 8 episodes now, and that's keeping me busy.
Right. Oh, I meant to share before we were recording it, so let's share it now. We're actually hosting Spirit of Math has a money education partner, so we actually hired them privately in case you want to bring Owen to join us. I think it's in the summer, but we got half price because we provide the facility.
Oh yeah.
So we'll talk about it after.
Okay.
Yeah. So our kids are doing it, and a bunch of other kids are doing it from the office. Yeah.
Cool.
We get nothing for it. It's just sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to check it out? You may even want to sit in.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, that's cool. The podcast.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I started it. I thought about, I've been thinking about it for a while in terms of starting it, and it took...
You've been thinking for a while.
Yeah. Well, you know what? For me, it's like, I've always wanted to, for me, financial education is so important, right? Like, I think back to when I was a kid, and I didn't necessarily get any formal financial education, but my dad, we talked about money all the time in terms of more about a lot of times the lack of it or how to hustle for it. And so that's sort of been ingrained in me from the time that I was young. And what I found was, as I was thinking about how I can serve or better help people today, I thought, okay, what can I talk about and what do I want to do? And so starting a podcast, helping parents raise money smart kids so that they have a better shot at their financial future just seemed to resonate with me. And I think that's something like right now, there's just not a lot of resources, I think, that are dedicated to helping kids be more financially literate. And so I just want to put something out there and be a resource to people to help further their education.
I just finished reading The Psychology of Money, and it brought up a good point. It's American, so like whatever they're called down there, 401k. I meant to look it up, so I don't even know how old RSPs are, for example, but they're not that old. They haven't been around that long. So savings hasn't really been something that's been around for multiple generations, right?
Yeah.
So it's a newer subject.
Yeah.
Like your experience is very similar to many of my clients and many people who are listening to this, was that maybe their parents knew a little bit about money, but likely the generation before knew even less around savings and investing.
Well, if you think about the generation before our parents, that was, I guess, the Great Depression and back then where they saw a lot of their savings go away. It was like money was scarce. I mean, it was scarce probably for a lot of people. So I would say our parents' generation, like my parents were immigrants coming into the country. Like they came to Canada with like nothing, right? Like very little education. Like I think my mom finished, or she was in high school. I think she finished high school. My dad was, I think he finished elementary school. So they didn't really have a lot of education itself, but they had the desire, and I give them a lot of credit. Like being able to like pick up and go to another country and start from scratch, basically.
Yeah. Not speak the language.
Yeah, I mean, they spoke the language. Like my mom, her primary language is Chinese, Cantonese. Yeah. She spoke some English, and then my dad, he spoke English. Like he was from Jamaica and came to Canada and in search of a better life. Like his dad was basically the owner of a general store in Jamaica, and that's what my dad helped him run. And so my dad would tell me stories of, when they were sleeping at night, they would lock up the shop, and there would be people that would be breaking in to the store to try to, get things. And he was like, you know what? I don't want to live like this. I don't want to live here. And so, he met my mom, and they decided to come to Canada. I think it was my mom's aunt or someone that lived in Montreal, and so that's where we ultimately ended up settling. That's where I was born, and then we moved around to Toronto and other places growing up. But yeah, I think it was one of those things where I just saw how hard my parents worked, and especially my dad. Like, he didn't have a steady job. He was a realtor, residential real estate realtor, and he would take me with him and my brother while he was on business, taking a look at houses and previewing them. And he did that. He did he had a wholesaling business for a while, like, so importing, whatever dry goods and then delivering them to people. He was a bookkeeper. He was hustling. Like, he was basically trying to figure out a way to put food on the table for the family. And so my mom was helping take care of my brother and I, and then later on she ended up working like at, I think she worked at a travel agency for a little bit, or a retail store. But it was really up to my dad to sort of, he's the main breadwinner, and just make money to survive, really.
Yeah, so survival was the thing. It wasn't about saving.
It wasn't about savings and investing. It was really about surviving. So it definitely was not about investing. It wasn't until actually probably when I was a little bit older, that's when he started to, I think, focus on investing, where we were more grown up, and he would hone in on me and say, look, you got to get an investment property. You got to get an investment property. And so at the time, I think I wasn't necessarily that receptive to it. I didn't really brush it off, but I wasn't keen on it. And it wasn't until, so the year before I got married, so I proposed to my wife, or girlfriend, now wife. And it was like, okay, there's going to be this big, to me in my mind, like this big wedding expense coming up. So I'm like, okay, you know what? That motivated me to say, okay, before I spend all this money on a wedding, I need to put money into an investment property. And so that was when it clicked in, like, okay, I should get an investment property and divert some resources to it. I didn't even necessarily have money at the time, but it focused my attention to getting an investment property. And so I ended up buying a student rental property in Waterloo, off market. And I bought it, and I borrowed money from my dad. My dad lent me $48,000 to use as the down payment, charged me, interest rate, market rate of interest on it. And I managed the property myself for the year. And what happened for me was, like, in terms of when it all clicked in terms of real estate, like, and what you can do with it and how you can use it as a wealth creation vehicle, was the end of that first year, I ended up refinancing it and buying a second student rental property from the same person that I bought the first one. He was actually a university professor who was looking to retire. And so I ended up reaching back out to him again off market and saying, look, I'm interested in buying more property. Are you still interested in potentially selling some of your other ones that you're looking to get rid of before you retire? And he said yes. And, we negotiated the deal. But again, I didn't even have a down payment. I broke the mortgage, refinanced it, pulled the additional proceeds from the first student rental and used it to buy the second one. And so for me, like, that's when the light bulb clicked on for me. And it was like, oh, you can actually, buy real estate without any of your own cash. You can and grow your portfolio and your net worth that way. So that was that's when it started for me.
That's pretty cool. Did your parents own any investment property before this?
You know what, my parents owned, there's a time where we lived in Etobicoke near Humber College, and actually we ended up renting a room in our basement out to a person from who went to Humber College. And so that was part of, they earned some rental income that way. They also had a rental property. This is back in the 80s though, when the interest rates were so high. And I think they actually lost money on that deal, to be honest with you. So they bought the property. I think they ended up taking, they bought it. They were renting it for a while, and then they ended up selling it. And when they sold it, there was a VTB on it that they had to take back, vendor take back mortgage. So I don't know if that deal was profitable for them. Right. But I know always, like, my dad, especially like from high school onward, he was always I think he just harped on getting an investment property, and I should have done it. In hindsight, I would have loved to do it when I was in university. Like, it was crazy because I would see, you'd rent for whatever,
Right.
X amount per room with your friends, and I remember hearing about one landlord who owned a number of properties on the certain street in Waterloo. And I was like, he must have so many different properties here. But it never clicked into me that, oh, maybe I should try to get a property and then live in it with my friends while I was in university. Because then, I mean, whatever. In hindsight, everyone's like, oh, I wish I bought more.
Right.
But
I most people are listening, so they don't see me rolling my eyes. But sorry, how long ago was this first property you bought?
so the first property that I bought in terms of a rental property was 2007.
Okay. So good time to buy.
Yeah.
Okay, so I always harp on that if folks are going to listen and learn from someone, they should learn from someone who has what you want, right? So you have a sizable portfolio. Can you share about that?
Yeah. So, I have, so between myself and other joint venture partners that I've brought on, I have an ownership interest in 25, mainly single family residential properties, some student rentals, some single family, some small like multis. And I've been doing it, so I started, actually the first one that I bought was not even a rental. It was actually my own condo that I bought after I graduated from university. So that was back in 2002. That was pre-construction, 2002. And then I, it took them 2 years to build it. And I moved in 2004. So I've been investing in real estate since 2004. And just, in the beginning, it was more like buying a property a year. So, my first student rental was 2007. Then I bought another one, 2008, that same one from that same professor. And then I bought another one, 2009. And then it wasn't until, I guess, 2011 when I met you, actually, as well. But I joined RAIN, which was a great group at the time in terms of, the real estate investment network. And it was really a way for me to like level up. And I wanted to get more focused on real estate. And I wanted to be around people who were, doing what I wanted to do in terms of investing and growing their portfolio. And so that's when I joined RAIN in 2011. I met you, and that's when it sort of took off. Like, I think I bought another one. It was a single family in Hamilton in 2011. And then what happened was, so my mom, she passed away basically in 2012, January of 2012. And up until that point, I guess, so it's really not until you lose someone that you really realize like how precious like life is and how short and how not guaranteed it is. And so when she died, it was really like, it hit me hard. And that basically, like, I was angry at the fact that, she passed, and the fact that I wasn't able to spend as much time with her as I wanted to while she was in the hospital. So she had an illness, and she had to have surgery to basically remove some stuff in her spine, which ended up, which they got out, but ended up paralyzing her from the waist down. So it was tough. It was hard. It was a really tough time. And then when she passed, it sort of basically unleashed all this like fuel in me that I said, okay, you know what? I'm not guaranteed to have, a life long into the future. Who knows when my time is up? I want to make sure that I get to a point where I'm, I can make a decision in terms of my time, and I don't have to like work. I can basically build a real estate portfolio that generates, cash flow and passive income, and do all the things that we love about real estate in terms of appreciation, so that I can get to a point where I don't need to work if I don't want to, and then I can spend the time the way I want to do it. And so that really, I would say her passing provided the fuel to grow my portfolio from that point on. So I bought a bunch of property in 2012 and 2013, a lot in Hamilton, with your help, and then I started to move out to Alberta and bought a bunch there as well. Again, not just with myself, but for myself and other joint venture partners who I brought on, a lot of family and friends that I just, they saw what I was doing. They were interested in what I was doing, and they wanted to get involved in the real estate market. And so I thought, okay, I'm doing this. I enjoy real estate. I love buying real estate, and so I ended up buying as well for them as well. In conjunction with myself. So.
I laugh when you say I enjoy buying because I showed you some scary stuff.
There was. I remember there.
You must have like, what the hell am I doing here?
There was. I remember there was stuff we would see. It was. I mean, I loved in the West Harbour area, but there's some of Hamilton. Near the GO train station, and Jane Street North, and all the great things happening around the harbour as well, and. There's some stuff that you took me through. I remember there was one on John Street. I don't know if you remember, but it was like the floors were uneven, like it was tilted so that it was like a bowling alley pretty much. But it was one of those places where there was a lot of work to be done. Right. It was a fixer upper.
There were lots of those in the area.
There were.
And you bought some of those too.
I did buy one of those. Yeah, like I bought. So the first property that you helped me buy.
Okay, let's do this. Let's whiteboard it.
Right. Oh, sure.
I do want to come. Actually, can we start with the first Waterloo student rental?
Sure.
All right. So we're doing this for the first time. I'm gonna whiteboard. All right. Okay. So we're gonna start. I want the listeners to know. I think numbers are good. I think it's just healthy that, I keep telling people, everything's relative, right? But if you have no data, no context, and you don't even know relative to what.
Yeah.
Right. And also just a bit of a history lesson. Okay, so we're talking.
And I would say so we can go through these numbers, and a lot of people are going to listen and say, oh, I can't get those numbers these days, obviously, because I bought 15 years ago.
Right.
But the main thing for me was, in today's context, you can look at today's numbers. They're going to be a lot higher than obviously 10 or 15 years ago, but you can still make the numbers work in terms of positive cash flow. So. So we can definitely go through these numbers. They're gonna sound like ridiculous because they're so low in terms of how much I bought it for. But keep that, keep that in mind for like today's dollars. It still works.
All right. Waterloo. And you lived in Toronto.
I lived in Toronto.
So you drove close to an hour.
Yeah.
How long?
Yeah, it's been a little over an hour. Hour and 50 minutes.
Hour 15.
Yeah,
and I think that's important.
Yeah, and the reason why, so I started off when I was, so again, before I bought that first one, I was super motivated to buy something, and I started looking initially in Toronto, but what I found was, so at the time, Toronto was quote unquote expensive, and I couldn't make the numbers work. So I decided, okay, you know what? I know Waterloo. I lived there for 4 years while I was in school.
So you invested in what you knew. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I ended up buying a student rental. So this is back in 2007. I bought it for, I think it was like $240,000.
Okay. All right.
Something like that.
And what do you think it's worth today? You can't ask me that because I don't.
Well, you know what happened? I ended up selling that one back in it must have been 2016, I think, 2016, 2017, where what happened was, so where the location was, it was on a major street close to the university, like within a walking distance to both Waterloo and Laurier. And the person who approached me about buying it was a developer who had been basically assembling land parcels because he wanted to build a big condo.
Nice.
Yeah, so I ended up sitting down in a coffee shop with him. And we negotiated or hammered out a deal. But yeah, so I sold it. I've sold it, but I bought it. I sold it for basically at the time I wanted more than $1 million, so I sold it for like 1.1.
Yeah. 2017.
Yeah. Because for me, it was like I knew at the time that.
Right, so we shouldn't even talk about this. So we said 1.1.
Yeah.
This is an appropriate one. Here.
So I knew at the time that he had already picked up other properties. And it was actually the planner, so the city planner that got in touch with me saying, oh, like basically there's this planning application going through and, you may want to think about selling because this developer basically is looking for land and I know he needed it because if he didn't get it, he would have had to build an underground parking.
Oh, that'd be really expensive.
Which is super expensive at the time.
It probably costs more than that.
Yeah. So for me, it was like, okay, I knew that, in terms of leverage, I So I had in my mind what I wanted in terms of a price, and he met that price.
Fantastic. Okay.
So back when I bought it for 240, like I put down $48,000.
Yeah. And then renovations?
Renovations wise, I didn't have to do much. It was basically a 5-bedroom student rental property. There was no upfront renovations. I inherited the tenants, and then over the years I remember spending some money to renovate. Put some new flooring in the kitchen. I don't even think I did work in the bathroom really, like in terms of a major renovation. At the time, it was not necessarily. Yeah, it was maintenance.
Okay. And what did you rent it for?
Well, back then, I mean, I probably rent. It was like, I don't know. I want to say 400 a month, 350 a month.
Okay.
Back in those
bedrooms?
dollars. 5 bedrooms.
So 5 times 400, $2,000. So it's $2,000 rent. And then curiosity market rent today?
Well, so I own other rental properties, student rentals in Waterloo, and I would say like the last ones that I rented. So I bought a place last year off market as well, and I rented it for $620 a room.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Even with all the competition.
Yeah, you know what I found? I found that in Waterloo, for example, there was a lot of people building these multiplexes, and so there's
big ones, right?
Big ones, yeah, big ones, huge ones,
high rise,
yeah, like
30-story. How big are they?
Not really 30-story. I'd say like 15 stories, maybe 10, 15 stories.
Yeah, still serious.
Still big.
Yeah, lots of supply.
Yeah, lots of supply. And there was a time where I was like, oh, you know what? Like, is this? Are people going to want to be in houses? But what I found was that a lot of people. A lot of students, they actually still love houses. They want houses because if you live in these big multiplexes, you're sharing your space really with like a ton of other people. You don't really get, they're smaller as well, like in terms of the size. So you don't really get as much.
The bedrooms are smaller?
The bedrooms and even the units themselves, right? The units are still probably, again, for 5 people, but the units are smaller. They don't have a backyard really. It's just really not a space that they can call home. So I found that the demand for houses was still quite strong, even when all these multiplexes were going out.
It's very strong.
Yeah.
Fascinating. All right. What do you think you cash flowed when you originally this is fantastic rents for this purchase price?
Yeah. So what did I cash flow? I mean, it was. I couldn't. I mean, it's been a while, and I sold it. So
ballpark.
So at the time,
$100 a month.
How much?
A couple $100 a month, maybe.
It was probably more than that. It's probably more than that. Based on and that's one of the reasons why I decided to do student rentals as well, because of the better cash flow.
Right.
And I mean, yes, a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, it's definitely more maintenance," and it can be in terms of like more wear and tear on the property, right? Students are not going to necessarily take care of their property as well as, let's say, a family or a couple or whatever. But what I've learned over the years is that like it's super important to obviously screen and make sure that you put in a group that you think is going to be responsible. And so I would say I've gotten better at that. But yeah, like at the time, I mean, yeah, there probably was more maintenance wise. Like it was like 5 guys living in this house, and so yeah, I probably cash flowed about $300 to $500 a month.
What do you think it's worth today, if it still existed and it wasn't a development property?
Today, in today's dollars, I would say so I have another 5-bedroom student rental not too far from it, and I think the value on that one's about I'd say like 650, 7 easy.
And you still and you're dealing with rental licensing, are you not?
Yeah, in Waterloo there is a rental licensing program that kicked in. I can't remember how long ago, but yeah, there is. So it's basically you need to go through a couple of different hoops every year to get that renewed. It's not that big of a deal. To me it's like it's a cost of doing business. The city, I mean, they don't even. It's funny, like they don't even. It used to be before the current licensing requirements. You would have to get a whole bunch of other things done, including, let's say, your
ESA, HVAC inspection.
Yeah. And as part of the current rental licensing requirements, they want you to do so like your gas fueled appliances. They want you to get that checked, your furnace and your hot water tank.
Fair.
to get
That's
that check.
fair.
That's fair, which is fair. Obviously, they want to make sure that, or you attest to doing smoke detector checks every year, which I do. Things like that. So it's really, to me, it's I don't know. It's a way for the municipality, I guess, to control the license, like what housing is going in. But I just see it as it's a cost. Yeah, it's a cost of doing business.
It's coming to Hamilton, and already through the pandemic, a lot of people already sold. A lot of landlords already sold, or they rented out to families. And then you know how families are; they stay.
Yeah.
They're not.
Yeah.
If they got a lease, they're renting under a year or 2-year-old rent. They're probably staying. I don't know how long
Yeah.
they're staying. They're going to stay for a while.
Yeah.
And then what I'm seeing in Hamilton is that's causing a lot of pressure because the demand's not is back to pre-pandemic level. Supply is way down of housing, and then licensing is being rolled out in Hamilton around the student areas,
Right.
and that'll cause more landlords to sell. So that like I'll be the only game in town, not the only, but
Yeah.
and then maybe I can see 620 rents per room, which would be like more than a 10% increase. Sucks to be students.
Well, but it's still relatively cheap compared to what, I mean, even some of the condos or multiplexes that are around the university are charging. Like on the newer stuff, they're getting, they're easily, charging $750, $800 a room. And a lot of it, I think, is tailored towards, let's say, international students that are coming in, and they have like international parents. They've got money. They're sending their kids to school or whatever. But so I would say, like, I've been trying to keep it as close to there as possible, but at the same time, there's a bit of a gap because it's not as luxurious, let's say, as a high rise.
So if you were cash flowing 300 to 500 a month before, it would increase by 1,100 or so.
What's that?
Based if you kept the house.
Yeah, if I kept it, yeah.
Your cash flow would be ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right. And then just some quick math. Assume these assume you sold it today for market value. So let's use 650. Let's be conservative. I like being conservative with all my numbers. You paid 240 for it. That's a capital gain of 410. You only put down 48,000. Yeah, that's 8.5 times on your money. 8.5 times return on your money. I don't think it was a good idea to buy this one. All right, so let's do another one.
Okay.
Let's talk about a Hamilton property.
Sure.
Which one do you want to talk about? Ray or?
Do you want to talk about?
Balsam?
Sure.
Okay.
Or yeah, why don't we talk about? Sure, or talk about railway if you want.
I like them all, but just kind of funny because you and I met at Rain, and then we went looking for properties. And actually, I don't even know how we came to the decision that we would look at West Harbour.
Well, you know what I remember. So when we started looking together, you were showing me stuff on the mountain, and then I mean, in hindsight, that would have probably been a good buy as well because of.
Well, they're all good.
They're all good, but I mean, at the time, it's funny. Like I wanted, I didn't even at the time. I wasn't necessarily convinced that, renting to a family, the suburbs was the way to go. So I was more focused on downtown. And that's why we decided to look downtown where like the West Harbour area. Yeah. And there's a lot of different things that were happening.
It was very up and coming.
It was very up and coming.
Yeah.
And I like.
It had a long way to go, though. Let's be fair.
Yeah. It was gentrifying.
It was gentrifying, which means it was pretty ghetto.
I wouldn't say it was ghetto. It was like you could see there was pockets of like, I don't know. It was yeah. There's good and bad in the area, but you could tell it was on the rise.
We're talking about 2011.
This is 2011.
All right. And this is Hamilton West Harbour.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know what Hamilton West Harbour, we're just northwest of downtown along the shoreline. Right. So which property you want to talk about? Should we talk about Railway or Ray Street?
Sure.
Or,
Yeah. So okay, let's talk about Ray.
Because that was the first one I helped you with.
Yes, the very first one.
So let's paint a picture. It was the power of sale.
Yeah. So it was a power of sale.
So that means so for the listeners' benefit, the bank is selling it.
Yeah.
So someone failed on their mortgage. The bank is selling it. We don't see We don't see that much these days with such a strong economy and housing prices so strong. So yeah, and the house was rough. I swear there were bugs during the inspection.
I don't remember the bugs. I wouldn't be surprised. I remember in the basement there was some water. There were some water issues in terms of like, yeah, getting up the drywall, and so we had to rip that out. But it was rough. Like it needed some work,
Oh, yeah.
and so I bought it for. What did I buy this for? I bought it for.
Around 150.
Yeah, it was about 150, 156. And then I had to spend, call it about 25,000 to get it rent ready. So I think part of it was doing some electrical work. I think I had some knob and tube. It was doing some work on the kitchen. It was doing some work in the basement where like basically put it down new flooring, framed out the bedroom, I think.
In the basement?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
You haven't been back in a while, huh?
I didn't back on.
Down payment, 20%?
Yeah, it must have been 20%.
Now, what were you thinking? Like, how did this compare to the other stuff you bought? Because this was not a good condition property at all. And I know 25,000 doesn't sound like much today. Like, we were joking before we were recording. But that's a kitchen. That's
Yeah.
like a rental kitchen. It's
Yeah.
not even a nice kitchen.
Yeah.
Right? Today, well, this reno today would be, oh wow. Like the electrical alone is usually around 10,000 these days.
Yeah.
Alone.
Yeah.
And you did flooring, probably another 5. You put up some walls, probably another 5. You did quite. Did you do some bathrooms and kitchens? This whole place, no, the place needed work.
The place, you know what? The main bathroom, which was on the second floor, needed. You know, it was okay. It was not bad. I didn't have to do. I didn't have to do too much in there. In the main bathroom. In the basement bathroom. It was in the basement bathroom. It was. I had to do a little bit of work, not much again.
You had 2 bathrooms. Not common for this area.
Not very common, no. I mean, the basement bathroom wasn't the greatest. It was, but it was a second bathroom, which again was not very common. Like I've got,
Which is a big bonus.
which is a huge bonus. Yeah,
Yeah. And then what's it rented for? What do you remember your original rent?
I don't remember the original rent.
1,300? I'm gonna guess 1,300.
Yeah, I would say the original rent. I can't remember the original rent. Like it's up to call it 1,700 now,
Oh yeah.
which is still under market.
What do you think market is?
I don't know. I just know it's under market.
It's over 2. Market should be over 2 grand.
Probably, yeah.
For the listeners' benefit, because the housing market's cooled, with interest rates going up, the rental market's heating up. So yeah, so that's current rent, and yeah, you could probably get $300-400 more, right? How long's the tenant been there?
There was a turnover probably in the last like 5 years.
Oh, 5-year-old rent, right? And what do you think it's worth today?
I think it's probably worth about. We talked about this, I think, before, but I think it's probably worth about. I don't know, at least.
Probably similar.
Probably similar. Yeah, 650.
Actually, it's not similar. It's not even similar. It's not similar at all to your Waterloo property. Yeah, 650. In the spring, it could have gotten a lot more.
Yeah.
But you're not going to cry if you sell for 650. And so, sorry, I'm laughing because I look at these numbers. So you have a 650. You paid 156. You also paid for a reno, 25,000. Right. So your return on your. So we add together. So sorry, 650 less 156. That's almost 500,000. Right. I don't need to go much further to know this was a rocking investment. Add together your reno plus your down payment. That's 56,000. Your return is 8.8 times.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Like, I think that's the beauty of real estate, right? Like, what if you think about how, if you imagine, house prices at least doubling over a 10-year period, let's say. So it's not a matter of necessarily trying to time the market of, it's really, that's the phrase, right? It's not timing the market, it's time in the market. Mm-hmm. So putting your money to work for you so that you can allow the market to do what it's done. And, if you think about what's happened recently over the last couple of years, I mean, it's stupid. It's unsustainable, how much prices have gone up, and things are going to correct a bit, but that's okay. I mean, if you hold it for the long term, and for me, it's like, it's always been a long-term hold. Like, I wasn't necessarily interested in flipping houses.
That's a lot of work. This is already a lot of work.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. And I would say, like, for me, it's like, it's so hard to buy.
I know.
Right? So why am I selling?
We're never going to find this again.
No, you're not. And I think even today, like, even the stuff, I get, like, if you're trying to create income that you flip. So I get that if you need the income. But for me, it's like, at the time, like, I was working full-time job. I didn't necessarily need to liquidate or sell these properties to get cash flow. But it's there when and if I ever want to sell, I can sell it and whatever, lock in the gains.
What do you think your parents would think about all these properties you got now?
I think they would probably. I mean, I think my dad would. I think he'd be happy. Obviously, I think he'd feel he was a big influence in it, and he was, in terms of developing that mindset to getting property and building it. So I think I'd be happy to see it. They probably think, like, well, okay, like, how are you doing all this? But no, I think they'd be happy.
Oh, they probably want to invest some more money with you. Oh, another property. We promised to talk about Balsam.
Oh, sure, yeah. So that one...
Because this is the truth about real estate investing.
Yeah.
It's not all sunshine and rainbows.
It's not. Like, and I think these are the types of properties where it can scare a lot of people away. So this property is a triplex that you helped me buy. And so we bought it and I bought it with a partner, a JV partner. So I bought...
Friend or family?
Family.
Okay.
Family, yeah. So I bought that, and we bought that in 2012 for
legal triplex.
legal non-conforming triplex.
Legal non-conforming triplex.
Yeah. Bought it for $243,000.
Oh my god.
This is not in the West Harbour. This is away from the West Harbour, but
yeah, this is east, Lower City, East End.
Yeah, and so I spent about $35,000 to do a bunch of work.
Right. It is a triplex.
Yeah.
3 kitchens, 3 bathrooms.
Yeah. And so I think, I don't know if we necessarily want to run through all the numbers, but like this is a property I would say was probably in terms of like horror stories of like what can go wrong. This was one of them. So, when I bought it, it was fine. It was good. But there was a period of time where probably about 5 years after I bought it, I thought about selling it because there were so many different things going on at the property and it sort of all hit at once that I just thought, man, this property is just a big headache. But so what happened was, in 2017, and I had a property manager, managing these properties in Hamilton.
All of them, all your properties are managed, right?
Yeah.
Even your Waterloo ones?
The Waterloo ones I still take on myself.
Okay.
But in Hamilton, there's, and I've got a fantastic property manager in Hamilton who deals with that now. But what happened was in 2017, I had another previous property manager. And so this particular property, like there was so much stuff going on, like where what happened was I think the tenant in the first ground floor unit stopped paying rent. We had to evict them. They ended up, and that took a while to do that. While we were trying to do that, and so this is a tenant actually where they had so we found out after the fact, once they were eventually evicted, they had 15 cats in the place. So we had, the property manager had to call in SPCA. there's so much like crap and junk left at the property. It's funny. I was looking back at some pictures that were sent to me from my property manager, and it was like, this place is like, they were hoarders.
Oh, a hoarder.
They had a ton of cats.
Sorry, was these inherited tenants or?
No, these were tenants that were put in.
Oh, crap.
So I would say, that.
Sorry, how long were they there for?
How long were the tenants there for in terms of before we got them out?
Yeah. Or even before they started causing problems.
I mean, it's been a while, but like they were there for, it's been too long, but it probably like a number of months before they started causing problems.
Okay. So you didn't have much notice that they were hoarders and cat people.
No. And then what happened was, once we got them out, apparently there were these unauthorized occupants that were also living in the place at the time.
With them.
So they were not with them. They were not on the lease. And so again, it was a process of trying to get those people out, even though they were not on the lease. And no one was paying rent, obviously. Then when we eventually got those people out, there were some squatters that broke into the place and damaged windows and damaged things, and they started living there for a while as well.
The same people, or this is a new group?
I can't remember if it was the same people, like the same unauthorized people, or if it was just, I think, people who just broke in and got in. So that was all going on in the ground floor.
Right. This is the east side of the lower city.
Yeah. on the second floor, there was a period of time where I think what happened was the unit became vacant. I don't know if it was issues with the ground floor because people were not getting along, or they decided to move out.
Yeah.
I can't remember, but
They were dog people, not cat people. Sorry.
maybe. And so that was vacant, and there was a bed bug issue. So there was a bed bug issue that was trying to, that we're trying to get resolved. So while this is all going on the ground floor, the second floor was vacant as well, and there's only one other tenant living on the attic, I guess the third floor. So that was all going on. We eventually did get rid of the people on the ground floor, and then there had to be some work done to renovate the place, to get it up into, like, clear out all the junk, renovate I think it was the kitchen and the bathroom, as well. And what happened was, towards the end of that year, I got sued at the same property, because what happened was there was some sort of incident where I guess someone fell off like the staircase, the exterior staircase, and they got injured. But what happened was, so I got served this statement of claim, but it was for an incident that happened like 2 years prior to that. And and so they sued me, and so like all this was happening around the same time. And so what happened was, I eventually ended up terminating that property manager and took over the property basically during the Christmas holidays in 2017.
Took it over yourself?
I took it over myself.
Oh, whoa.
Because I wanted to really deal with it myself and just see. I mean, so I'm not the type of person that is scared away from kind of this stuff. Like, I just see this as it's an opportunity to grow, and so I took it over with the whole intent to just try to stabilize the property myself before transitioning it to another property manager, my current property manager, who takes great care of it now.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, who's the current PM? Just the first name, because we don't share.
The current one?
Yeah.
Is the same one, I think. So former police officer.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's stop there, because we don't want that name to get out.
Yeah.
We save it for ourselves and for our clients, right? We need to prioritize.
Yeah. So I ended up stabilizing the property. Well, actually, no. So what ended up happening was, I ended up finding a tenant to rent out the second floor. They were actually an issue. So I even though I screened them, did everything like that, but they ended up moving out, I think within 6 months after the fact, because they eventually stopped paying. But my current property manager dealt with all that afterward. Yeah. Anyways, so that was, I would say, like, stuff like this happens when you buy rental properties, and things can go wrong. It's not all unicorns and rainbows. Like, people think, oh yeah, like you see like great appreciation or great cash flow. Well, that's the good part of it. There can be the bad parts of it. And so there was a period of time where I thought about selling. I'm glad I didn't, because I look at the value of the property today and the fact that, it has great tenants in place today and it's very stable property. But it made me realize, like, I think until you go through it, there's that inclination, the urge to, like, when things start to go wrong, like your first instinct could be to, oh my God, like I want to exit, get rid of this, right? Because you kind of want to get rid of the pain. It's painful. Like you're not bringing in income to the property. You're still carrying it with a mortgage. You're still having to deal with issues in terms of like whatever can pop up. And but ultimately ended up staying the course and resisted my urge to sell. Thankfully I didn't.
Yeah, you and I must have talked. I remember you telling me you were getting sued and stuff. We talked about this, right? And I'm imagining I made the introduction to
Yes.
to the property manager.
Yeah.
Got it. So, I was just thinking in my head, should we sell the property? Should it be listed, or should we be listing it? It would be all sunshine and rainbows. Because I had to ask, what is it rented for now?
What is it rented
You
for?
paid
today?
$243.
Yeah.
You rent out for $35,000, and then so what are the current rents?
Yeah, current rents today are. What are current rents today? Current rents today are $3,300.
How old is that rent?
That is So what's end up
Oh,
actually?
compared to what you paid for it? Good lord.
Yeah. So I would say, like the person on the third floor. So they are way under market.
They're the original?
They're the original.
You inherited them?
Yeah, I inherited them.
Oh, so they've been there forever.
Yeah. They're just they gave notice they're moving out.
No way.
Yeah, so I'm going to be, spending some money to renovate the place.
Probably $35,000. It's the original budget.
Yeah.
I laugh because the inflation on renovations is just insane.
Yeah.
Right. And what was the attic paying?
Sorry,
what were they paying in rent?
What were they paying?
Yeah.
So it was a bachelor suite. They were paying, it's like $600 or $700.
Oh my God! What you charge for a bedroom? And then what do you think the market will be after that?
I think it'll be about 1,400. Or sorry, no, you know what? No, it's a bit less than that. It's a bachelor suite. It's not very large. I think I'm expecting 1,200.
So it's like a double.
Yeah.
Are you glad you didn't sell?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't remember the conversation we had at the time, but usually my conversation is not to sell. Right? Tenants are temporary, even though it feels like it's forever. The property is nearly forever. It'll burn down at some point. Nothing lasts forever, but it's solid brick.
Yeah.
It's Century Home. It'll last for a while.
Yeah.
It'll outlive the tenants. It'll likely outlive us.
Yeah, I think, and that's the thing, like, and especially for me anyway, like my mindset's always been more long-term in terms of real estate investing. So I was able to see past those current troubles. But I'll admit, like, there was times where I was just like, I just want to throw in the towel and just get rid of it.
Yeah.
I just want to get rid of this problem. But
And what do you think this house is worth now? This legal non-conforming triplex?
I think it's probably about 650, 7.
That's it.
Although we did talk about this like a few months ago. Maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, maybe a little more. Duplexes sell for $1 million these days. Legal duplexes, but this generates a fair amount of income.
Yeah.
But you're in no hurry to sell, so
Yeah.
hang on to it for a while.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, I think, I think especially with the market where it's going, there's a bit of softening now, but it's going to, in the long term fundamentals of the market are strong, right? There's still tons of immigration into, not only Canada, but into the GTA area, and people need a place to live, and they're not building enough supply. There's not enough homes to support the amount of, the people, population growing and the immigration coming into the country. And so I just think like that just bodes well for the long-term fundamentals of the market in the GTA.
Right.
And so, I expect it to continue to grow with value.
And you're not just like a regular Kool-Aid drinker. Like your work actually gives you access to a lot of data, does it not? In terms of like what the Canadian economy is like. Yeah,
like we, I would say we see a lot of, data in terms of rents. Like we see strengthening of rents across the country, like in different provinces. There's some pockets that where things are not as strong.
Can you share that where that's not strong?
Yeah, so I would say like parts of, let's say Edmonton downtown is not as strong, but like, so I have property out in Alberta myself where in the suburbs, like things are going really well. Like we've been able to,
Sorry, suburbs of which city?
oh, sorry, let's say in Edmonton,
Okay.
in Edmonton.
Sorry, I cut you off. Sorry.
Yeah, in Edmonton. So what we're seeing is that, I would say in the Alberta economy can go up and down. I mean, it's still tied to resources, oil and gas. And what we're seeing is that let's say in Calgary, things are very strong there. And we know that there's typically a lag, 12 to 18 month lag between what we see in Calgary to what we see in Edmonton. But at the same time, we're seeing, some growth in Edmonton suburbs in terms of rents. Like on some of my own properties where we've been able to, on renewals, increase the rents by, between $50 and $75. And we haven't seen that in years. Like it's been relatively flat. So it's a nice thing to see. I mean, the good thing about, let's say, Alberta in general is that in contrast to Ontario, Alberta doesn't have rent control. So you can raise the rents, to anything you want, basically, once every 12 months. Whereas in Ontario, you're capped at your rent guideline increase, which is puny.
Just gotta, just need the government to maintain. Because before we're recording, we talked about New Brunswick, for example, where their government implemented rent control for the first time for 12 months, and then my money is they're gonna extend it. That's how I would bet.
Well, I think in general, like a lot of governments are I wouldn't say succumbing, but like there's a lot of pressure. I think, you think about all the headlines these days in terms of real estate, like how housing is unaffordable. And a lot of politicians think that the way to solve that is on the demand side, not necessarily the supply side. They're not really, to me, in my mind, like addressing real issues on the supply side fast enough. They make all these promises, but, in reality, it's not happening. And so, one easy way to appease to your voters is to say, oh, we're going to put in rent control because we're going to keep a cap on what we can, what landlords can raise their rents for. Right. But in the end, that ends up hurting your supply side, because then you're not even, let's say even developers are not even as motivated. They still have to make their numbers work. They still have to make their pro formas work. And so by putting that in place, you are artificially suppressing the returns and therefore causing supply to decrease. Like you're not adding to new supply. So it's just short sighted.
Because at a minimum, landlords won't spend on maintenance. They're going to look to where they can cut costs if they can't raise rents. Yeah. So, because inflation's not real, right?
Yeah, and inflation's only like 6 or 7%, right?
Walmart in their earnings report, they reported that their food costs, Walmart's being like the largest retailer in the world, I believe, at least in the States for sure. Like their food costs are up 10%. Right?
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised to see, like, in terms of food inflation, like we're going to see that continue, because what's happening with, let's say, in Ukraine and Russia, that's going to create an issue with, the fact that I think Ukraine is a huge exporter of, let's say, wheat and other commodities. So that's going to work its way through the system. Yeah. The thing, gas prices, gas prices are at, I have an electric car, so I don't even feel that pain, but it's, gas prices are through the roof, and that's going to feed its way through the system in terms of, it costs more for trucks to transport goods across the country. So that's going to work its way through the system as well.
Farming equipment, it's in everything. And then India recently, they stopped exporting their own meat. So that'll work its way through the system.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about the Edmonton properties? What year did you buy?
Yeah, so I bought basically some of those Edmonton properties in 2012 and 2013. That's when the bulk of it happened.
Wow, you're a busy beaver.
I told you, 2012 is basically, after my mom passed. It was just, it unleashed the fury.
What did you buy? What kind of properties were these?
You know what I found? So my strategy in Edmonton was really, it was different than it was in Hamilton, let's say. So in Edmonton and surrounding areas, basically what I did was I wanted to pick up newer properties, not necessarily the ones that are older. Like in Hamilton, there's century homes. There's a lot more in terms of maintenance. So in Edmonton and Leduc and other surrounding areas, what I did was I wanted like cookie cutter, like starter homes. So, and that were newer, that basically were built within the last, 5 to 10 years. So
Very new.
not as much
Yeah.
maintenance from that perspective. So at the time, yeah, so I would have bought, you know, a lot of them basically, they were like 2017 to 2010, like year builds. Or sorry, 2007 to 2010 year builds. And then there would be these semi-detached homes that I would pick up for less than 300,000.
Mm-hmm.
And that I would rent. I mean, this was before the oil crash, but I would rent for anywhere from, 1,600 to 1,900. That was sort of the feel of how they were. Well, and that's how I did it. I just said, okay, I bought the first one, and I remember. So the first one, I ended up flying out to visit Edmonton on Civic. It was a Civic holiday weekend, and so I ended up meeting up with a realtor who helped me end up buying a lot of these places out there. But I met with a number of realtors at the time, met with a number of property managers, so I could try to get comfortable with the market and the rents and the areas to go, the neighborhoods that I want to be in. And I think I ended up putting an offer pretty much not too long after that visit, and then ended up just buying more from there, because it was pretty much, I wanted to replicate a system that I felt comfortable with. And so it was like, okay, semi-detached, less than $300,000, rent for $1,600 to $1,900. It cash flowed well, so the cash flow was probably anywhere from $100 to $300 after your operating expenses and after your financing. And again, yeah, I did this either on my own or with JV partners.
And then fast forward today, what would these semis be worth? And what's the rent today?
So the thing is, I would say a lot of these semis haven't even appreciated too much from the time that I bought them.
Oh.
So the good thing in Ontario is that we've seen like all this run up in prices and the values just take off. In Alberta or Edmonton, let's say, I'd say, we went through, when I bought in 2012, 2013, it was like pre-oil crash. So I think prices...
You bought just before a previous crash, though.
I bought before
the financial crisis. You bought before...
No,
you bought
I bought
after
after the financial crisis. But I would say, like, no, in the lead up to the oil, when oil was like at $100 a barrel, like prices were had gone up, and then I bought, and then they kind of came down after the oil crash.
Yeah.
And then I think they were working with its way back up. And then the pandemic hit, and then it's it came back down, and then now, so I would say like they're not, what I would estimate these places to be, they're not even they're marginally up from what I bought them for. So maybe they're, high 200s to low 300s. Nothing.
So almost even.
So almost even.
Even after with all this inflation.
Yeah. So that's, I would say, in terms of, I wish things took off there the way it did here. But so that's the one thing I would say in Alberta, it hasn't been like from the reality is like appreciation has not been the way it has in Ontario. And so even though cash flow is good, mortgage pay down's good, the appreciation hasn't been there.
Right. Yeah.
But that's fine again, because I'm not looking to sell these.
Right.
I'm looking to hold these long term, and even if it doesn't appreciate, it's fine at the end of the day.
Do you know if builders are selling for around the same price now?
I don't know. I would think, it'd be one of those, it's funny because like I find in Edmonton, like when I'm there, like just these new like subdivisions just prop up like anything. Like they're like mushrooms that just all around the Ring Road area. And it's almost because it almost doesn't seem as though like in the GTA here, we're kind of land constrained in that we've got the green belt and protected areas. In Edmonton, it just proliferates. Like there's more housing that just grows and grows, and there's nothing to really constrain it, which is maybe one of the reasons why we haven't seen...
They still have infrastructure constraints.
Yeah, they do, but it's just...
Like roads, hospitals, schools, sewer.
Yeah. But we just haven't seen... I don't think that, like, you look at... it just doesn't seem to have the same land constraints that maybe would support higher growth.
Which is kind of part of the magic here in the GTA, the Golden Horseshoe.
Yeah.
We also have the lake on the other side we can't build on.
Right.
This is all fascinating stuff. Justin, thank you for being so open. Anything I'm leaving out that we want to cover? Oh yes. Can we talk about the R word? We've had discussions around you not needing to work anymore.
Well, I think, you know what, for me, it's always been one of those things where, like, yeah, starting 10, 15 years ago, my view has always been I want to build a real estate portfolio that generates, passive income. And we all know that real estate's
not completely
not
passive.
Necessarily passive.
The
but
Balsam is a great story to show it's not.
It's not. But at the same time, it's generating cash flow and appreciating in value, so that my whole thing was like, I want to be able to, at a point in time, be able to be financially free, that I can make the decision of if I want to continue working or not. And so, I can't see myself like in terms of like a traditional retirement where it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to sit around and do nothing all day and, go lounge on a beach or whatever. But I've always, made sure that my long-term mindset was, okay, I want to get to a point where I can make that decision and I have the freedom and choice to make that decision. And I think that's ultimately where I see, even the young people today, it's funny, like I've talked to a number of young people where recently, like they're looking to get their first investment properties, right? And I say to them, like, you just have to get started with one. And even though prices are like where they are today compared to where they were like 10, 15 years ago, you can't even look at that. It's all relative, right? If you can make the numbers work today, you get it. And then 10 years from now, you're gonna look back and you're gonna be like, oh, I wish I bought more, or that was cheap at the time. Yeah. Because so it's ultimately trying to put yourself in a position where you can have, full control over your time, which is our most valuable resource. Like, it doesn't matter, like, everyone's hung up on like chasing dollars or money. Time is your most valuable resource and you can't get that back. So, in terms of the R word, I think it's really getting myself to a position, which I think I am in, where I can choose to continue doing what I do. And as long as I love what I'm doing, I'm going to keep doing it. Right. And that's ultimately what you should be doing. Like people, I've always found like, you meet people where they're in their jobs or roles where they don't enjoy what they're doing and they're doing it. If you're working somewhere where you're not enjoying what you're doing, like why? Do something that you love to do. And fine, if you have to make sacrifices along the way where you're not necessarily enjoying what you're doing, make sure you get like hard assets or income producing assets where you can generate that additional stream of income and build that up so that one day you can walk away from that job that you don't like or whatever. So but as long as I continue to love what I'm doing, I'm going to keep doing it, and ultimately that's my goal.
In your corporate job, are you working from home more now?
It's a hybrid model, yeah. So I'm working from home 3 days a week and working in the office twice a week.
And what was it before the pandemic?
Pre-pandemic it was full-time in the office.
Oh yeah, so you actually have way more freedom than you had before.
Yeah, I would say in terms of and I love it. Like I love the fact, I think the hybrid model is the way things are going to go for a lot of different industries. It's not going to work for everything, but the flexibility, I think, it's funny, pre-pandemic, the expectation was like, it has to be in the office, like that's where it's all done. But the pandemic forced people to pivot immediately and work from home, and it still works. And so I think, more and more businesses are going to continue using this hybrid model. One, to, retain their people, or two, to attract their people, because I think a lot of people are going to be expecting, these hybrid type of arrangements. Mm-hmm. And I think it makes sense. Like I love, there's times in the office where, there's absolutely a need to have like face-to-face conversations and be in the office. I think there's definitely a place for that, but there's also definitely a place to, it's okay to work from home. You can still get, all you need to get done at home. And this thing is I love the fact that, I'm home there's no commute, that I can be home for dinner with my kids and family. So it's nice. It's nice.
Yeah, you can almost argue life is better than ever. There's a virus out there that's trying to kill us all, but I'm joking, and it's not trying to kill us all. It doesn't kill that many people these days. But yeah, even your triplex, we're probably talking about 8 times return on your money.
Maybe, yeah.
Worth all the trouble?
Now, after I've got past it, yeah, it's worth the trouble. At the time, not so much.
Justin, thanks so much for doing this. Any final words? Where can folks find the podcast?
Yeah, so I would encourage parents who are listening who are looking for a resource to raise money smart kids. They can go to moneydadpodcast.com and they can find me there. And basically, the podcast is really meant to help you have those conversations with your kids. I bring on different guests every week, whether they're educators, authors, small business owners, people that are out there really trying to have conversations about money with their kids. So whether that's normalizing conversations, I think a lot of people are not necessarily having enough conversations with their kids about it, whether or not it's because money is still a taboo subject in the home, or they don't feel comfortable talking about money with their kids. It's one of those things where, the sooner that you have those conversations, the better. So I think first level is really having or developing that financial literacy amongst kids. And the best times to start is when they're young, right? Like there's a ton of adults and people that are just getting to it once they graduate or once they're starting to work or whatever. And to me, I think that's good, but I think the better option is to start them when they're young, when they have time on their hands, when they, learn the power of compound interest and what you can do in terms of,
the importance of time in the market.
It's time in the market, right? And I think the other thing is like, even just from a compounding perspective, if you teach kids early about whether that's, let's say investing, that changes also their outlook on consumption. Like if they think about, okay, I can invest my money and earn a return on my money, then they, maybe consumption or having the toys and all this stuff is not that necessarily that important to them, right? So I think building habits at an early age is super important. And, that's one thing that I'm trying to do with my kids and one thing that I'm just trying to help other parents do for their kids as well. So people can look me up on moneydadpodcast.com. And, I encourage everyone to subscribe to the podcast, spread the word, talk, if you enjoy the episodes, talk to your friends and share it with them and just get the word out. I think, people, kids will be in a better place and set up for a better financial future by having those conversations and learning about money.
Amazing. I think we'll stop it there. Thank you, Justin. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank
you for coming out.
Thanks for having me. And it's fun.
Thank you for listening. If you want to learn how to invest in real estate from scratch, my team teaches beginners how to use the #1 investment strategy in a virtual free training class every month. Go to investortraining.ca/podcast to register for our next class. I publish an episode here every week, so subscribe if you want to keep learning from seasoned investors like myself and my guests. Again, if you're ready to learn the nitty-gritty about real estate investing, register for our next free virtual training class at investortraining.ca/podcast. Again, thanks for listening to the show. Talk to you next week.